Hi, this is Peggy from Roar. So today our guest is Matt Cook. Matt is the founder and CEO of Product Vessel. So Product Vessel has a very interesting business model. It's a digital marketing agency and they provide services in exchange for a single digit royalty. So thank you so much, Matt, for being with us today.
Thanks, Peggy.
Always a pleasure to see you. So let's get started on financial services. So from your perspective, what will be some of the lasting impacts of COVID in the financial services world?
COVID is disrupting everything, right? I think we all can agree on that. I think for us, I come from more of a frustrated entrepreneur background where it's tough to raise money, and big banks don't do a very good job of helping people get access. And I think we've seen that from the U.S. to Canada, the distribution of payroll remittances and so on and so forth. I think it's great for private sector to come in on the scene, find the holes in big banking, fix it, and shake things up.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that trends of new fintechs, whatever you want to call it, that are going to look exactly as what you're saying, the gaps, or to make a business out of that. And we're going to see, I think, a new crops of companies coming up, which is very exciting. In terms of regulations and policies, do you see anything coming up in the near future or in the midterm future following what we've seen?
For regulations and policies?
Yeah.
I think what was interesting last year, I attended a Future Fintech conference in New York, and there were a ton of regulators there. And I felt this big pendulum swing of big banks and institutional lending all the way down to like the new guys on the scene, like the Stripes they're growing and the Squares. And yeah. I think regulators have a really tough job in front of them, especially with decentralization of currencies and fiat changing over to crypto and whatnot. But I'm all for it. I think regulations can have a tough time, herding the sheep, so to speak. And our borders are ever expanding, right? We're a global company now. When like 6 months ago, we were Canada and US, and just the very nature of not being able to travel, almost in a weird way, opens up the borders even more.
Exactly. Yeah, I've never connected with as many people outside of Canada, but now because it's so easy.
It's like back to back Zoom meetings, right? Like, sorry, I'm late for the next one. It's in UK or Ireland.
Exactly. It's odd, but I agree with you. To stay on this global world and global perspective, obviously sovereign states are taking on a lot of debt to support their economies. At the same time, you see a lot of protectionism as well, some trade wars, and I would say words that are maybe a bit too harsh for a global world. Where do you see the new financial order, the new global order going in the future post-pandemic?
Post-pandemic, some interesting. I hate doing stats because I get them wrong, but the credit rating of Canada, one of the G7, I think it's top 2, AAA rated, and even amidst the crisis, it stuck it out. And for whatever reason, globally, they believe that Canada is good to invest in. And I'm thinking of countries coming on the scene, investing a lot of money, like in China, right now. I think the total valuation of JP Morgan and Bank of America are like the same exact valuation as a new private sector fintech company in China. And so you see the ranking system just totally getting slaughtered. And I think I told you a couple weeks ago, I was like, I think in the next 10 years, even maybe less, like a third, if not more, of banking is going to be dead. There's going to be brand new players on the scene. Entire banks just crumbling.
Well, and what's interesting with N Financials, I think that's the company you're referring to, in countries like this where you leapfrog the infrastructure that we have in developed countries, you can actually, same thing with telco, when you don't have to put lines under landlines, and you go directly to mobile. So they've been able to come to market with very, very good products, while we have to suffer through legacy challenges in North America and in Europe. So I agree with you. I think you're going to see the acceleration of that, actually.
Yeah, most definitely. That reminds me, about 7 years ago, we had a company in Africa, bootstrapped company selling cocoa beans from Sierra Leone to Europe. And we transacted with ABM AMRO, so they'd finance the beans at the port. We'd take the finance, go back to the bush. And this was like, I mean, we were living in mud huts, and this was no GPS. We had to hand draw maps in 900 villages. And I remember going to this company, Africell. They were one of two service providers for cell phones. And you'd have like, Africans that are making less than $1 a day with little Chinese cell phones, and they were transacting currency on these cell phones, just passing the code. So we said, well, to like decentralize this whole marketplace of, brokers come and buy product at a really poor rate. Farmers always get abused. They don't have the luxury of the internet to tell them the fair market value. We said, let's distribute thousands of cell phones. So I remember at corporate office, I said, can I have 10,000 cell phones? And they're like, what, are you crazy? I'm like, look, I'll import the phones. I just need the SIM cards. So we labeled all the SIMs, we distributed them to all the farmers. And at one moment, we could tell them 3 times a day how much the price of cocoa was.
Ah,
If another agent came, they would look at their cell phone and have to have faith, of course, but that was the price. And to me, that was very disruptive because, you take this very rudimentary bush type of, program where there's not even roads, but yet there's cell phones exchanging, like they're way more advanced than we are in the West. That
exactly.
blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's wonderful in countries like in Africa, or in countries like in South America or in Asia, is this opportunity to take the technology and make it a tool for financial inclusion and increasing the level of living. So I think that's even more, actually way more interesting than what we see as, peer-to-peer lending or stuff like that. That's cool, but I mean, that's not changing the lives of you, me, Americans, Canadian. While there, you lift people out of poverty with that type of technology. So way more interesting impact.
No doubt.
Yeah.
We have a friend in Israel, a company by the name of Fido. I could probably put him on blast. He does micro lending, mostly to Africa and Southeast Asia, but it's all cell phone based, right? And he'll fund up to $100 per person, and his whole scheme is he'll scan the cell phone of a local, and based, even if they don't have an identity, like they don't have like a legitimate proof of ID, he will scan their cell phone with 4,000 algorithmic metrics, and he'll determine if they're creditworthy based on really abstract things like, do they spell properly, do they have do they report to a manager every day at a certain time, like they'll look at the GPS locations of how far they physically travel. They also scan their friends lists on all their apps. And this program just basically gives like a free access to the entire cell phone and all the apps on it, insert to a certain capacity. And he processes that, and he has over a 90% success rate for
Oh,
small loans.
okay. Okay.
So imagine like data decides if you're creditworthy, right? And that's what excites me. Like, I don't care, all this stuff about inclusion. Like, we should zoom out and say, we don't care what color you are, what race you are, like where you're from, how old you are. We don't even care what your name is. Show me the data from your business. Show me the data from your bank account and the accountability over time, and we should lend based on that. So I think for our business, it's spearheading a lot of thought, right? The thought leadership is what I think is going to push us over the edge.
Well, and especially when you look at the decisioning model right now, all the way to underwrite loans, it doesn't apply anymore when you can shut down the economy and things go belly up literally in a week. So you need to think differently about the way you're gonna decision lending, especially. So that's the right time to think about it. I really don't like FICO score. I think it's the stupidest way to assess someone's credit worthiness, and on top of that, it brings bad behaviors, make people take debts and all that stuff. I don't think it's the right thing to do. So hopefully, I'm really hoping that that crisis is going to help us with that. So next question for you. So in terms of resetting competitive positioning, what type of financial organization, I think I have an idea of what will be your answer, but what type of financial organization do you think will come on top post COVID?
It's a good question. I'm a big fan of credit unions in the sense of everyone owns it, right? Even if it's rudimentary at its source, the mission is there, right? It's like we care about you, right? Like an airline who you're a shareholder. If you're an employee here, you probably tend to care more about your job.
Yeah.
I think banking should do the same. I think there's a lot of margin in lending. I think there's we all know the interest is what
Yeah.
carries banks forward, and I think they don't need to have such massive amounts of money centralized in one place. I do think decentralization is key. There's enough to go around, and the small medium business enterprises that are kind of in the middle take a little bit from big corporate America, if you will, trickle it down into small business enterprises, give them enough incentive to start bigger companies, to make investments, $2, $5, $10 million, bootstrap their way up. And those are the kind of like social economic development based thinkers of our time that are going to be the next product offerings that distribute that wealth better.
Yeah.
So I think like the baby boomers, no offense to the baby boomers, but like as they make their way out, so does the banks, right? And as the new people come in, they think more about the little guy, right? Like empathy is a really trending keyword right now. Like it used to be intellectual quotient, your IQ determined how good you are as a CEO. Right now it's your EQ.
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to get applied, I think, to finances, and we're not going to see these, 200 billion market cap banks. We're going to see 200,000 smaller local banks that the people own. They're happier.
So that's a good segue to my next question, which is more about the big guys. And from your perspective, what type of digital transformation or what type of transformation these guys are going to come up? I know you believe they're going to go extinct. So for the ones who are not going extinct, what will be the change? I guess definitely community first, client first mindset.
Yeah. What's going to happen? Sorry, I'm.
Yeah. What do you think this large banks going to transform into?
Oh, I think they'll just innovate. I think they'll come up with new products. They'll invest in new subsidiary arms. They'll figure out a way around regulation. Even us, like we've approached some big banks, and it's funny, like when you pitch, like banks are dead, right? And you're telling that to a bank. I've noticed they're looking for innovations, right? They understand crypto, they understand blockchain, they understand how the customer connection is not there like it used to be. So tech is a big deal right now, and they're just going to pivot. There's a lot of money right now, right? And there's a lot of means to create and figure out and hire and recruit the right people. So they'll pivot. But I think it will be the end of like the real estate, the banking real estate will be dead. It will be digitized only. You won't walk into a teller. But I don't think I'm like prophesying that. I think most people would sort of project that anyways. It's just how fast that happens, I think, is probably the question.
Well, and the challenge as well is that there is also, back to the community feel, is the little old lady in a remote village. She doesn't want to do on her phone. She doesn't have a phone. So there is also this aspect of, I remember being from France when we had like when villages were losing their branch, that means the village was dead. Because very often that was the only link that was still happening, and there is also an aspect of this community, this support that is very strong with branches. So does it mean we need to have like a branch at every corner of a large city like Toronto? Maybe not, but there is that aspect that I think we should be very careful not to lose as well.
That's interesting. On that, like, it brings me back again to Africa. We had we put a bid in with the Minister of Finance for a agriculture development bank,
Mhm.
and they came to us and they said, "We understand your reach is to 900 villages. You have access to a lot of farmers. You know, they wanted to lend over $1 billion in agriculture development loans.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
did a program with the EU, and the problem, I think, a lot of times, like, there's wealth, there's global wealth, but it's the distribution of that.
Exactly.
Like, the
Exactly.
fear is you can feed the whole world 10 times over, right? With like what, a billion or trillion, some silly
Exactly.
number, but how the hell do you do it? And so when they came to us, they said, "What? How are you getting in and out so efficiently to transact? And would you be willing to partner with us? We'll remove any red tape and, you know, so on and so forth, to get you banking status." And we thought about it. It wasn't our business model. It required a lot more diligence. I was living half the year in the country, half the year out, and I didn't really want to live there the whole time. So it didn't work out. But to this day, I know they still haven't executed on that plan.
Oh,
And
yeah. Okay.
it's like, if they did, they would do it through a series of buying posts and
Yeah.
elected individuals that are trusted within the communities to
Exactly.
steward that allocation and distribution
Exactly.
of wealth. So
Yeah.
banks could do that.
Yeah. That's the parallel of your branch.
Yeah, like,
But
why doesn't every street in Canada have a bank? Like, why, like, you walk to your mailbox, right? You get your mail. Why don't you walk to your ATM and get your cash? Like, it could be a digital scan. You could have so many decentralized options,
yeah.
instead of having to go to the big city to
Yeah.
do banking.
For sure. So last question for you. So what were the changes personally from this lockdown period? So did you pick up new habits? Are you doing yoga every morning on YouTube, or what's? I know you're not traveling anymore. You're always living halfway through the world. So what's been the big changes?
Good question. Having a baby, that's a good one. So
Ah, well, that's a way to learn that news. Congratulations.
The COVID does some things. Some friends and I joke about, you know, it's a good relationship test, right? You're locked in the house. It's either make or break. So in my case, it's make. But honestly, I think, for fun, I mean, fun aside, like, the focus is phenomenal. Like, a lot of people are sour and whatever. Like, I think it's a blessing. I think it's a good reset. It's a good chance to look in the mirror, fix fix the downside, take advantage, because when it's over, people are going to reminisce about the days when they got to stay home and
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
easy and they didn't have to drive to work. So, I walk 14 steps to my office to work every morning, and it's like, I better make the best of it.
Yeah.
So if you're not making the best of what you have today in life, don't expect to get more tomorrow.
Uh,
So
well,
I thought this is a good one for us.
the mindfulness, I think, is really something that's coming up a lot. Like, to your point, realizing what's happening, and being present and making the most of it. I think at least a lot of the people I've been speaking with are in the same camp than yours, and making sure they're optimizing that time, actually.
Yeah, and look at this, just the sheer volume of interactions. Like, if you work downtown in Toronto, you could do 4 meetings a day,
Yeah.
drive time, lunch break, like this, that. Here it's like, I've never been able to do 15 meetings in a day
Yeah.
ever until now, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, our staff, we just say, if your calendar is not full, like, get out the boat. Like, if you have a paddle, just paddle. If you can't handle it, we don't want you. You're dead weight. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
time to move.
It is. Well, on these good words, I will say thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for taking the time, and really always so great to speak with you. Your global perspective, your different way of seeing the world, it's always super enlightening.
Thank you. Yeah, you're just like a bundle of joy and energy. I love talking to you every time. Uh,
Thank
and
you.
plus, it's fun watching these, right? These, like, interpersonal, kind of like mano y mano style interviews. I love it.
Yeah, that's been a great opportunity to do that. I don't think I would have been able to actually even start that type of series if it hasn't been for COVID. Once again, that was a blessing. Thank you so much,
So,
man. Have a great day. Take
all right.
care.
Bye.
Bye.